Hello and welcome to this Is Ibrox podcast. I'm your host, Ross Chalmers, and this is the Sunday session as we look to discuss a lot of the transfer speculation surrounding Rangers right now and some of the talking points from yesterday's 1-0 win over St Mirren. First of all, tonight, I've got Andy. Andrew, how are you? How's things?
Ibrox was slightly under the weather, Ross. A bit of a throat issue, a bit nasally. Caught my son's cold. Didn't really do much for it. Yesterday's result it did a lot for the result, not the game, not the performance. Yep. But today's news is helping ever so slightly, so I'm sure we'll get right in about it.
You love transfer speculation, don't you? We're all the same. And we're joined by Tommy as well. Tommy, how are you?
Yeah. I unfortunately for the listeners and the watchers have a perfectly fine working voice and throat this evening. So, yeah, unlucky for everybody. Short straw.
No, I'm sure they'll be buzzing to get to hear all your thoughts, Tommy, as usual. So I think there's only one place to start tonight, to be honest with you. Usually when we go through these Sunday podcasts, we maybe have a wee look at the game from the weekend first, but I think tonight there's only one place to start. Last couple hours, it's been reported that Rangers are looking to secure a deal for Óscar Cortés. He's a winger from Lens. I think it's a loan deal initially they're pushing for, maybe with a buy option in there as well. He's a 20-year-old winger. He was only signed by Lens, I think, in the summer there by for 4.5 million euros, should I say. He came from Colombia at that point. I think I was reading earlier that the two clubs are owned by the same group, so it's maybe one of those moves where it's all about development of the player. He's played 10 times this season. He scored 4 goals and 2 assists, so a good record for a 20-year-old. And a lot of the scouting reports out there are saying, he's quite direct, strikes the ball very well, and is a good finisher. Tommy, I'll come to you first on this. Give me your thoughts on the link to Óscar Cortés, and are you kind of happy that Rangers are trying to move into this market of essentially players from further beyond? How do you look at it?
Yeah, I think it's definitely the right thing. And I think Niels Koppen, the football board, the club in general have already identified and put a lot of effort in behind the scenes since Niels Koppen has come in with the absolute buy-in of Philippe Clement. By the way, this has not been done to him. I don't think anybody would expect anything would be getting done to the manager anyway, of identifying these markets, much like a lot of the players that we've been linked with. If you take even Diomande, Jefte, these type of people as well, whilst they may come from South America or Africa or whatever, they also they've been in Europe. So if you look at Diomande out in Denmark, you look at Jefte playing, and even though it's short-term playing in Cyprus, it's the same here. So it's all about that mitigation of risk. If you can start to score things off instead of going to a market and being the first person to bring somebody to Europe, yeah, there's always a chance there that you do that because you get ahead of the pack. Then if you can mitigate that by saying they've played in Europe, they've acclimatized or whatever, they've brought the family over, they've done that transfer, it's always helpful. So definitely in terms of where we're going with this, there's bargains to be found, and we need to be in that market, and we need to be trying to get gems and then bring them in. Let them leave with a winner's medal or several winner's medals and with a healthy profit going into the bank balance.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Andy, how do you look at this one? Is this a signing that excites you? Do you know much about the player? Have you managed to do your research in the last couple of hours?
In the last couple of hours, no, not particularly. However, it does excite me to an extent. Unfortunately, Mr. Beale ruined transfer windows for me. When you look at YouTube clips and stats and various other things like that, Lammers and Dessers, etc. You've seen them. We'll get on to Dessers later. You'll kind of ruin it for me a wee bit. I agree with Tommy. This one makes sense from what I've seen. Our very own John Walker put a thread up, which I like the look of. And why wouldn't we? We've been needing somebody like this. Since Phil Clement came in, we've lost Danilo, we've lost Abel Sima. We need to replace them both. Not this guy won't replace both, but he might replace Sima. He could replace Sima. We've been needing a winger for God knows how long. He seems to have a good pedigree. He's a goal scorer. He seems fast. Everything I think you need to win or potentially do well in Scotland, he seems to have. He's a good age. We get him now and pay for him later. This buy now, pay later, that seems to be all the rage at the moment. Europe-wide, I suppose, for various reasons we won't get into. It just makes total sense for me. It makes absolute total sense. And I know I've spoken about it in my friends group and on here. Sometimes we can be very short-sighted. We'll get into Shankland at one point. I may as well mention him. Somebody was going to mention him. Some people may accuse you of being short-sighted. I've always said he would do a job for us, but I've also caveated that with, we don't know if Clement fancies him, and who does Clement fancy? I think we've got to put our trust in Clement. I think he's went to the board and says, get me these players now. We'll deal with it in the summer, and I'll show you what I can do. And what he's done so far, I think we trust him. I think this one makes total sense.
Yeah, just on that, I don't think we're going to get Philippe Clement coming out and saying about Cortez or anything like. I spotted him when he was 12 or 13, and the unders, and I've watched his career ever since. I don't think we're going to get to that level.
Well done, Andy, as well. I had it about 10 minutes, I think, before Shankland was mentioned. You've managed to hit it in 5 minutes. That's impressive. I think
it's been a hell of a lot more later.
Straight in.
You might as well throw it in there because it's going to get mentioned at some point. I'm sure it's going to be mentioned right up until the deadline this coming week. Tommy, obviously it's broken the last couple of hours, and it sounds like it's moving fast. It sounds like Rangers are really pushing to agree a deal. Is that something you would expect to get done over the next couple of days? What do you think? Is this something that you think the club will be able to go over the line?
So the club are definitely interested. There's no two ways about that, and it is a deal that they're looking to do. In terms of the stories about he's en route immediately and it's done, that's not correct. There's still a little way to go. So the clubs are definitely still talking, the agents talking, the players interested, all that type of really good stuff. But it's not over the line yet. Club very, very keen to get it over the line though. And so I would expect, without any last minute serious hiccups, that we should be seeing Cortez in a Rangers jersey relatively soon in the next few days or whatever. But yeah, talks that rumours that he's maybe on a flight already and all that type of stuff. Those are wide of the mark at this point.
You sound very much like Philippe Clement there, Tommy, where you're trying to calm everyone down, and it's not done until it's done. The signature has to be on the bit of paper, and I think that's fair.
Signings are a marathon, Ross. They're not a sprint. If that's it, but that's certainly what the position is right now. As lots of conversations going on, but it's not over the line yet, and he's not signed.
Cool. No, that's good for everyone to hear. I hope everyone's maybe not let down by that news as such, but yeah, it's good to hear that Rangers are keen to get this over the line. Looks like a really good profile player. Something I want to ask you both actually before we move on, because I think a lot coming into this window is we need a striker. I think we've said for the last 2 or 3 years we would like to sign a right winger, right? And it looks like he's able to play on either side, which is good. And I'll ask you first, was a winger a priority position to target this window for you?
Yes, but probably not. As you say, they're not as much of a priority as a striker. But I think it is. Obviously, that's been made more of a need with the SEMA issue. Obviously, that makes sense. I think in Scotland, you need pacey wingers. It seems to be the teams we play against, apart from Celtic, Hearts, perhaps Aberdeen. Fast wingers win games, as simple as that. You get so many chances from that. If you've got a striker who's in form and who hangs around the penalty spot, you're going to score goals. Wingers are very, very, very important in general, but in Scotland in particular, I think. So yes, I think it probably was a main one, but not perhaps as main as the strikers. I think we still need a striker. We'll get into whether Dessers is re-establishes himself as a Rangers number 9 or not, or opinions. As it stands, no, for me, striker is still the main one. But yes, it's still needed.
Tommy, what about yourself on that? Was a winger something that you wanted to prioritise in this window? Did you think it was necessary for Rangers? I
did, actually, yeah. And I think I was on our mid-season review. And if people haven't checked that out, why not? Saying exactly that. I think it was left back, maybe a central midfielder, maybe another winger. Didn't obviously expect anything to happen to Abdel Assima, but obviously a striker as well. I don't think anybody's walking past that. That shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. So yeah, if we can get that left back in as well, get a winger, get another forward on top of Silva, who obviously plays out a little bit wide, then I think we're pretty good there. I think we'll be pretty happy generally as a group in terms of the fan base with the way the window's gone. Some of that might rest on who we can get out the door as well, and I'm sure we'll talk about that here, because all things are dependent or contingent on other deals happening sometimes, and that's the same for our club as it is for everybody else's.
Well, Hugo Bear has the same thought as you there. He says, what about departures? Too many in the squad that aren't good enough. We'll come on to Jose Cifuentes now. He was obviously linked last night with a loan move to Rizespor, I believe. I think that's how it's pronounced in Turkey. I think Rangers were looking to put in a 2 million buy option in there, not an obligation, I believe. I think it's a buy option. Cifuentes, I think we can all say, probably struggled to settle in Glasgow. We've not really seen the best of him. I think, from my personal opinion, I'm not really sure the system that we play suits Jose Cifuentes. He looks to maybe be a player that suits playing a 3 in midfield, and we don't play that. We play a 2 in midfield, and I'm not really sure you see the best of him deeper in the park. I'll come to you first on this, Tommy. When you heard the news about Jose Cifuentes last night, what was the initial reaction? Were you a bit, gutted to see the player go? He only came in 6 months ago, or do you think this is maybe a move that Rangers are going to try and get him used to European football and hopefully bring him back in the future? How do you look at it?
Well, there's always that angle. I definitely wasn't gutted. Need to admit that. Yeah, definitely didn't swing that particular way. Wee bit of disappointment because there was a wee bit of an aura around about Cifuentes in terms of up and coming, that South American midfielder. What can he do? Are you going to get that? I don't know if I suffer from the same thing as everybody else or different, but when you're getting players from these types of leagues, you are hoping that they're going to be the gem. And it's that bargain, it's that diamond that everybody always looks for. Hasn't worked for a whole host of reasons. I don't think he naturally got up to speed. He'd already played a full season. There was a couple of niggling injuries. He hasn't naturally looked absolutely his best in a Rangers jersey. There's been wee flashes. If he can go away and rehabilitate himself at another club and get up to speed, and then come back and fight for his jersey and do something, I think that's fine. If there was a reasonable amount of money, 2 million's been quoted, obviously, which is an uplift in profit. Probably break even when you factor in different things, but I wouldn't be absolutely, to use your phrase, gutted if he was to go at the end of the season. I think that's one that I probably look at it and I go, he's not done enough to make me feel that he's an absolute sticker. He's a Michael Beale signing, and I'm not saying they're all terrible. If we can get him out and Philippe Clement gets a chance to bring in a Clement Coppin signing, I'd probably be happier with that type of scenario than anything else.
I think that's a fair way to look at it, isn't it? If you can move a player out that the manager just ultimately doesn't fancy for him to be able to bring in his own players, then surely the club have to do that. I think there's always a real sense of frustration when players come into Rangers and they don't do well and they're sold on quickly. But ultimately, is that not what you want the club to do? If the player isn't performing and we can get a deal for him, then you move him on and you bring someone else in. I think that's just the way you got to look at it. I wouldn't say most transfers, but a lot of transfers don't work out. You just kind of have to accept that. You're always going to have certain ones that don't work. So looks like Jose Cifuentes hasn't worked, unfortunately, at this moment in time. You never know in the future. Maybe he goes out on loan, finds a bit of form, comes back. I'll ask you on that, Andy, as well. What was your kind of initial reaction to that? Is this something you wouldn't be really bothered about if Jose Cifuentes left?
Doesn't really bother me. No, same as Tommy. I don't really bother much about it. Again, Michael Beale, I'll mention him. He was going to take us to another level, if you remember correct. The saga went on so long, he was going to do this and do that, and I bought into it, as we all did, I'm sure. I don't know, I can't remember Reece talking at great length on a podcast about him, but I know he spoke in the WhatsApp group about him, and I feel the same way as Reece. I don't think he offers much. I think it's telling when I personally class a replacement right back, which we bought, as a better midfielder than him, if you know what I mean. I just don't see what he offers to the team. He may go away, shine and come back, and that would be fantastic, but as it stands at the moment, he's not going to get into the starting 11. I don't see where he could fit into the starting 11. He doesn't deserve to be in the starting 11, so it makes total sense to offload him now.
Sorry to jump in on you again there, but people have asked us via DMs and stuff like that, and in the comments previously on other pods, can they join that WhatsApp group that's Andy just referenced there? One, no, it's just us in terms of that. But two, trust me, I mute it most of the time. You don't want to join it, right? it's a nightmare most of the time. It's wild. Yeah, exactly. So trust me, we're doing all the followers and subscribers a favour. I'm not allowing you to join that at any point in time. There you go.
Yeah, I completely agree with that one. There's a few comments here. Most people in the comments are actually agreeing with the points of view in Cifuentes. I think most people feel it probably is the right move for him. Kyle says here, the system we play doesn't suit Cifuentes, but there's a player in there. If he moves on, I wish him well. CGM 55, Cifuentes looked amazing for 20 minutes on the debut until he got goal ruled out. He's been crap ever since. I would avoid the American market from now on. It's actually something I've felt as well. I'm not sure that MLS market's really working for us at this point. It might be something the club maybe have to look at. Maybe the player... I think what Cifuentes really struggled with was the adaptation to European football. He looked I don't want to say he looked sluggish, but I think he always looked a bit surprised at the pace of the game. I especially felt it in that first game against PSV in the Champions League qualifier. Obviously, that's a level up from what he was playing in the MLS. And that first half, he really, really, really struggled. And I'm just not sure he's ever recovered from that. So, maybe a move to another team in the European League will help him with that. I'm not sure. I think the way I look at it is it's probably a loan move to eventually sell him on, whether that's to that business for itself or he comes back and will look for another move. I'm not sure, but I think this might be the end of Cifuentes' time at Rangers, which is unfortunate because I think you're right in what you said, Tommy. There was definitely a lot of excitement about the signing originally. I think he was linked for about 3 or 4 months before it go over the line. I think Fabrizio Romano was the first person to tweet it in like March or something like that. So there was a lot of build up to this signing. So it's unfortunate it's not worked out, but like Kale said, I wish him all the best. Next one we're going to come on to in the transfers is this. I think everyone at this point is absolutely sick of talking about Rangers left back position because there's been so many linked. There's been so many bids for Ridvan Yilmaz. We're all sick of it, but I'm going to have to bring it up because there's been a few other developments the last couple of days. And we'll start with, I'm trying my best here in this one. I'm going to go with Jefte. Now, that might be incorrect, and if anyone in the comments wants to call me out on that, but I'm going to go with Jefte. Fabrizio Romano reported that Rangers had agreed to deal with the player. He's currently on loan at Apoel Nicosia from Fluminense. I think I read that Apoel Nicosia have a first refusal on the player, so that's maybe why the deal's been held up a wee bit. I'm sure that they'll have to be compensated in some way if Rangers are to take the player during his loan spell. Sounds very familiar to that kind of Malik Tillman deal, not maybe exactly the same, but kind of similar circumstances. On the left-back conundrum as well, I'm going to combine them here. I'll come to you for this first on this, Tommy. Galatasaray looks like they really are insisting on Ridvan Yilmaz. I think they had another bid rejected yesterday for around €3 million. You're not going to get Ridvan Yilmaz for €3 million. Supposedly, the club are looking for about €4.5 million on that one. Where do you stand on this whole left-back debate, should I say, is would you let Ridvan go if the money's right? Are you keen to bring in a new left back in Jefte? What's your thoughts on all of this?
I'm going to go with Jefte as well. By the way, I'm going to take a different path there. I'm going to go for Jefte.
Right, Jefte. Okay.
Jefte. I think I need to hit the A hard, Jefte. But there we go. My Portuguese might not be as stellar as I think it is. No, listen. More so, it's Philippe, Niels Koppen, the coaching team have come in and they've looked at it and they've went, don't quite fancy Borna Barisic, don't quite fancy Ridvan Yilmaz. That's ultimately what it is. I personally think Yilmaz is one to keep. And if you could cash in on Borna, I would let Borna go if you were bringing in another left back. Again, Jefte is looked at as a loan. And I think, he is definitely in that conversation in terms of where the club are at looking at players and stuff like that. I mean, I think there's a long, long way to go with that particular one. But he's definitely in the sights. But the club and the coaching staff and the manager have identified left back as being an area that needs to be uplifted. Now, again, you could talk about individual players and whether is it somebody to come in and fight with Yilmaz for that jersey. But subject to every player, if somebody pays what we want for them, then we cash in. As you say, Galatasaray's bids have been too low. They don't open the door to their conversation, and so. Until that point, he's still our player. I don't think there's a lot of interest in Barisic, which is maybe one of the problems as well. But again, I go back to recent comments from the manager and behind the scenes as well, which is the club have got very, very little appetite for players being there who are just running down contracts. They would rather cash in. And that might force a wee bit of a conversation behind the scenes within the football board, etc. of, okay, what level of hit can be acceptable if you're trying to put this discussion? Because this should be the last iteration where we're taking hits on players because we've now got a new model. But yeah, long way to go on that particular front until we get, again, contingent on people moving out to move in.
No, I think that's fair. There's a good comment here from Jason Smith. He agrees with you, Tommy. I think it's pronounced Jefte. He says, although it's probably wrong, but that's 2-1. So I'm going to go with Jefte as well now because I'm feeling under pressure here. So
quite clear to me that Jason knows his stuff. Quite clear to me.
and I don't. Yeah, absolutely.
He's also got a picture of the plane. He's also got a picture of the plane that Cortez is on, evidently, in his bio.
You can't wait for that signing, clearly. Another interesting couple of comments here, actually, that I wasn't aware of. So clearly I'm learning as I go here. Apoel are currently under a signing ban. Wasn't aware of that. And Paul McGarrigle says as well, Apple have an option to buy but they can't as they have a transfer ban. So there you go. I wasn't actually aware of that. I felt that I felt it was one of those situations where you have an agreement with the club to buy the player, but the player isn't interested in signing. Again, why I compared it to Malik Tillman. Unfortunately, he was not interested in staying here.
Just on that though, so what that does though, and I think oddly enough, I think Fabrizio Romano kind of pointed to this as well in terms of Apoel giving the green light to that one. So they can't sign, which means they don't have the ability to backfill. But they've got that loan agreement to the end of the season. So do they want to lose the player early for us to be able to get them, for example, because they'd have to go that way? Or are they saying no, in which case Rangers will move on to other targets and, if they want to fill that in the short term? So that's what I'm saying about being contingent. Sometimes that there is nuances across all of these deals that can trigger it forward. It's not a case that the club aren't pushing on a lot of things, but they are pushing on a lot of things to make sure that they're not bolted into just one player at the last minute of the transfer window. There is a bit more thought behind it this time round.
It's always one of those ones, isn't it, where the club are likely to have a lot of deals kind of lined up, ready to go. And it's that, I always talk about this, it's like the domino effect, isn't it? Once one goes, everything fits into place. So it's always what it's like now in modern transfers, because there's so many different parties involved in every single transfer. You're trying to line things up. There's a good couple of comments just before I bring you in, Andy, and your thoughts on this. Kel 1872 said, keep Ridvan and sell in the summer as value will increase. I think that's fair as well. And the way Ridvan Yilmaz is playing at the moment, I'm certain his value will increase because he's absolutely flying. Westhill says as well, I like Yilmaz going forward, better in the ball and a lot more confident. Would prefer to see Borna go. And Stephen Fay as well says, keep Yilmaz and sell Borna Barisic. The Borna Barisic one, I think a good point there, Tommy. If I'm another club looking at Borna Barisic, I'm not going to try and get him in January. He's out of contract in 6 months. Why would you pay a fee? I think you got to look at it that way as well, don't you? Because if Rangers are in that position, they're likely going to try and agree a pre-contract and try and haggle that fee down. So I'm not surprised there isn't a lot of interest in them. And I'm keen to get your thoughts as well. We spoke about this a little bit off here before we came on. What's your thoughts on Ridvan Yilmaz? Would you like him to stay? Is this hefty link not worth it if Ridvan stays in the building? What do you think?
100%. I would like him to stay. I can see him staying, and I can see Borna Barisic being the kind of backup left back until the summer. I don't think there's a massive need to rush out and get one, whether it be a loan, whether it be a purchase or a loan with the obligation or option to buy. I don't see it massively necessary at all. More than happy for Ridvan to stay from now until May and play the way he's been playing. I have no reason to think he won't. I think he offers so much more than Borna Barisic, and more than that, I think he offers more to the striker. If it is going to be Dessers, I just can't see Dessers getting on the end of multiple Borna Barisic crosses. I just think it makes total sense for Ridvan to stay here. Now, he is a sellable asset, as Tommy says. Everybody is a sellable asset. It's going to have to be the right price. And for once, and it's not often it happens to Rangers, he's actually more valuable to us at present, I think, than he perhaps will be to somebody else, or financially anyway. If he stays here and we go on to win a treble, for say, we get through another couple of rounds of the Europa League, perhaps even Dublin, his value is going to skyrocket. I think it's an absolute no-brainer to keep him. I don't see, and I haven't seen the massive rush to get rid of him. He did get a lot of stick, but from what I can really see, the stick he got was he lost a back post header to Lawrence Shankland against Hearts at Ibrox. They targeted him, obviously, and folk will target him. I think he's better than that. I think he'll learn from that. He's a young player, he's a good player, so I can see him learning from that. Borna Barisic's lost many a goal at the back post, so he's definitely better than him for us at the moment. In my opinion, I would let Borna Barisic's contract run down, though the manager isn't keen to do that. I would let it happen, reassess this in the summer, and keep Ridvan playing left back, Borna Barisic's backup. It's just a no-brainer for me.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and there's a lot of good points in there. And I think most people in the comments are actually agreeing that we probably keep hold of Ridvan Yilmaz at this stage. There's one from Cubby Cubster here as well. Love Yilmaz, technically brilliant player. I think for me, what I've always felt about Ridvan Yilmaz, he's always needed that run of games. You've seen it at the end of last season where he got a run of games and he showed his stuff. He's done it again this year. I think there is a player in there. I just wonder if does Philippe come on, look at it that is his left back for the next 2 or 3 years. And if he doesn't, I can understand why the club are maybe looking at potentially moving him on for a fee. I'm going to ask you both this, just a simple yes or no, right, before we move on. Because this has been going on so long, I just want to know what your gut feeling is, whether Ridvan Yilmaz will be here past the deadline. So, Tommy, I'll go with you first. Yes or no, will Ridvan Yilmaz be a Rangers player?
No.
Andy, what about you?
Yes.
Oh, right down the middle. I don't know where I go. I'm going to go with Tommy on this one. I think no as well. I think we will sell Ridvan Yilmaz. I think that fee will come in from Galatasaray. I think they're keen to get him, which will be unfortunate. I hope it doesn't happen personally. It's just my gut feeling. If everyone can get involved in the comments and let us know your gut feeling as well. We can all be desperately upset if Ridvan Yilmaz walks out the door. Anyway, the next point we're going to come on to, and I think this kind of ties in with Andy at the beginning of the podcast throwing Shankland's name in there. We're going to have to discuss it. I just wanted to talk a wee bit about Cyriel Dessers as part of this. And maybe based on the last couple of games we've seen, that it has been talked for a while. We need a striker. And I need to put this to you because it has been said on social media, the way Cyriel Dessers is playing, do we need one? That's 3 goals in his last 3 since we returned from the break. There's been a lot of pressure on him as well, with the likes of Kemar Roof not been available, Danilo not been available, and, it's been on his shoulders to grab the goals. I think that's 8 goals and 3 assists in the SPFL for Dessers this season. I think it's 12 goals and 7 assists in all competitions, which is a really good record, actually, and really surprising when you look at it based on the eye test. You wouldn't expect him to have that level of output. Andy, I'll start with yourself on this then. Maybe just give me your thoughts on Dessers' form at the moment before we get into the need for a striker. Have you been impressed with his turnaround since we've been back from the winter break?
Yes, 100% impressed with his turnaround. Because it was so bad to turn around from, if you know what I mean. From August till Christmas, let's face it, it wasn't great. You've seen it on social media. I'm sure we've all said it. Looks like a competition winner. He looks slow. He looks sluggish. We've all said it. So to go from that to 3-3, playing with a smile on his face, then of course that's a good turnaround. Ask me if I think Cyriel Dessers is a league winning number 9 for Rangers. The answer is no. It's going to take more than Dumbarton, Hibs and St Mirren away and 3 goals to change my mind on that. It's going to take a lot more prolonged form for that to happen. As it stands, it's great to see. He's a Rangers player. I'll always support him. Personally, I wasn't one of the ones that booed him. I don't believe in that at all. But as it stands, I don't see him being a league-winning number 9. That said, no, we'll get on to that later on. As it stands, no, I don't see him being a league-winning number 9. But yes, I'm happy with the turnaround. We'll get on to the rest later.
Tommy, what's your thoughts on that as well before we get into whether we need a striker or who we should target? Dessers' form in general has been really good. I think he's shown there is ability in there. Maybe he's not great to look at sometimes in terms of his technical ability, but he's certainly got an eye for goal. He's shown a lot of that finish yesterday was composure to the balls bouncing. I've seen it plenty of times early on this season in that situation. He would maybe try and bring the ball down. He would, run into the ball, fall over it, whatever. But yesterday he's done really well. He's taken a touch by the goalkeeper and he's put it in with his left foot. What's your thoughts on his current form, and do you think he'll continue to score goals this season regardless of whether we bring in another number 9?
Well, first of all, with composure, I need to give kudos to Andy there. I mean, regular watchers will know that I like to blow up the agenda by getting way ahead of myself and going in tangents. And Andy stepped in and then stepped back there. That was incredible to watch. But no, listen, yes, he is playing so much better inside the box and outside the box. His physicality looks better. It looks like he's lasting games better. His runs are, his movement was actually always okay, but he seems to be a bit more direct with it and sharp with it, and the players seem to be going with him on that, playing the balls into the channels, letting him pick up, and he is holding it up. Now, I go back to the fact that if we didn't have Danilo out and the problems with Roof, etc., you can maybe say there's a mix in there. Silva's an unknown scoring quantity, right? And we've just lost Abdel Asima's goals as well, and you're not going to see Danilo back anytime soon, as we well know. We also know that Dessers, if we go to likes of De Boer's comments and all that when he signed, he's a confidence player. So that's going to come and go, going to wax and wane. And the last thing you want is saying, we don't need maybe another goal scorer with all those injuries. And then his confidence goes when it gets to the really tight end of the season. And you're looking for those games, particularly, in the old firm ones, to get you over the line to win more silverware. I'm with this version of Dessers, and I hope he continues to score. It is good record numbers. So, I always want to see a number 9 for Rangers banging them in. Long may it continue. Do I want somebody else that we can turn to, even if we play a 2 up top sometimes? I absolutely do. Is that person already in the building? It would be Kemar Roof, but he can't be relied upon. Danilo's injured. Silva's unknown. Sima's now going to be injured. I just want a wee bit of comfort and clarity of another number 9 in there, please.
Thanks very much for no jump in, Andy. Jump in.
Ross, sorry to jump in and
Yeah,
interrupt you. Tommy said something interesting there. He's a confidence player, and that's true. Now, if you look at the Rangers fixture list for the next, 6-7 weeks, it's actually all right. And there's a lot of games at Ibrox. It's a lot of games against the bottom six. Now, you'll never say they're stick-ons, but there's certainly games that he could be in scoring goals. Will he build the confidence up? Possibly, if he was to score in them. But the Old Firm game in early April comes round again. Would you still be confident if he had a good record for the next 6 weeks until then? Would you be confident him leading the line in an Old Firm game? Let's wait and see.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair as well. There's a lot of good comments on this before I come back in to ask you about the definitive question. Who would you like? Do we actually need one, right? Well, we're getting there. Hugo Bear said, Dessers won't score barrel loads of goals. David P as well says, Dessers is all right for me as a good backup striker. And I think that's probably worth some picking on the now. Do you think the criticism would have been as fierce if Cyriel Dessers was brought in as you remember Antonio Cholak was always brought in as a backup striker? Do you think that is potentially went against Cyriel Dessers, the fees spent, and that's the expectation as he's coming in to be that starting striker? Whereas if you take a step back and go, okay, he's maybe not good enough to be a number 9 for Rangers every single week, but if you look at those numbers, he definitely can contribute. Is that, I'll come to you on that, Tommy, is that getting held against them by the support?
I think you're spot on. It's to some extent what Sam Lammers went through as well.
Yeah,
and they were talked up so much, and they were purchases, and they were starters, and they were going straight in, and yeah, it just hadn't happened. But I mean, if he'd been brought in, and you go, all of a sudden it's 13 goals, and he is, coming into a game, you go, that is pretty decent. But I'm not going to duplicate everything you've just said there. I think he is good backup. I don't think he gives a lot of. He's starting to slowly turn people's minds. I actually think there was no confidence that he would get a lot of goals or that he would break double figures at one point. He's done it slowly but surely, chipping away. Best of luck to the guy. I'd love to see it. You can't fault his work ethic and his resilience, because he's kept going. He was booed at Ibrox. He was the butt of jokes. He was the butt of rival fans' jokes. And he's kept stepping in, and he's kept going to the well, and he's kept missing chances. And now he's scoring chances. So best luck to the guy. Do I want somebody else? Aye, I do. And I would be happy if it was Danilo, but Danilo's not going to be on the pitch anytime soon. We need somebody. The problem you then get is, what's that look like? Is it a loan that comes in? Right? Is it we'll get to Shankland eventually, right? Everybody wait, right? Just hover over your buttons, right? We'll get to it. But do you want to spend that money in January? Is Shankland the long-term answer for Philippe Clement? Or do you say, I want to take a short-term hit because I've already sent Lammers out and all that type of stuff, and I want to get somebody who I can definitely play in the big games or whatever, and then I do my own clear-out in the summer? And that's some of this stuff, that you need to work into those transfers as well, because it's not just as simple as saying, like, there's somebody out there who's a brilliant goal scorer and has been playing regularly, but weirdly they're up for a loan, and we can bring them in whilst I've obviously got a permanent striker who is scoring goals and attracting, making his fee relevant. That's the fine line to walk, particularly when you get to that Hearts conversation.
No, I think there's a lot of good points in there, and I actually think there's a good balance in the chat tonight that a lot of people are saying about the fees, and they think that's maybe went against them, and I think that's completely fair, isn't it? But that expectation of playing for Rangers is always going to be there, so he's got to deal with it, and I think he's been able to, the last couple of weeks, show he can deal with it. He's came back, and let's hope he keeps scoring goals. That's the way I'm going to look at it, regardless of whether we bring in a striker. We are about to come on to that. I promise. I'm going to let you both have an opinion on that. Just a good couple of comments in here as well. Westell says, well done to Dessers on trying to turn it around. I still think he misses too many chances and doesn't offer enough. I think that's fair. Kyle1872 here says, Dessers is no way the answer. We do need a striker. Dessers has moved on. Gavin Quinn's got a good comment as well here. He says, my mind has changed a bit in terms of Dessers. Think he's settled in better. The manager's brought in Silva till the end of the season. So honestly, I think the club are not interested in a striker at the moment. Definitely keen to get your thoughts on that. And a good comment as well here from Chris Cherry. The guy was booed and laughed off the park at Ibrox, and he's still plugging along. He's shown he has the mentality. He'll be a decent squad option. Not convinced he's been the main man, but fair play to him. And I think that is a very fair way to look at it, isn't it?
I think the only guy that's been booed and laughed off the park more at Ibrox is Chris Cherry, right? That's the point. I'm sure you'll come back to me in the comments on that.
They'll
one.
definitely be coming back to you on that. So, Andy, you mentioned Shankland at the beginning of the podcast. You don't necessarily have to say it's Shankland you're looking for. Maybe it is. I'm now taking it that you definitely believe we need a striker. Anyone in mind other than Shankland, or is Shankland just nailed on that you think Rangers should be pushing for before this deadline?
I don't have anybody else in mind. No, I don't. Although I would be open to, if Clement was, I would trust him if he was to go and spend even ever so slightly less than you would pay for Shankland on a striker. I would completely trust his judgment on it and buy into it all day long. As it stands for me, as nothing more than a Rangers fan, it's Shankland. It just ticks all the boxes for me. Scottish, can prove he can do it here. The only thing that is still in the back of my head, and it was at the Edinburgh Derby just prior to the New Year. I'm sure we all watched it. I certainly did. Until he scored that goal, which is what you buy a striker for, of course, he didn't look great. Now, I'm sure Hearts give you a wee bit of pressure from the stands, but I think we probably do it a wee bit more. Would he stick up to that? I think he probably would. Yes, I think it's just a no-brainer for me. It's a complete stick on. You ask any Rangers fan, he's the man you mentioned. A lot of it, I think, is confounded with the fact that we went so far afield, paid so much money for what we've got at the moment. But that was, again, sorry to bring him up, but that was Michael Beale. Michael Beale's absolute nonsense that he spoke to us about and the trash that he bought for us and spent all our money. So that's really, really on him. I think that is helping cement the fact that we all want Shankland now. We've tried going abroad, paying the big money. It's not worked out. This boy shows he can do it in Scotland at a high level. Just go and get him. Definitive. 100%.
Tommy, what's your thoughts on it then? Is it got to be Shankland? You did mention earlier, maybe it could be a loan that Rangers look for. How do you look at this one?
I'm back and forward on this one, I have to admit. And I would like Shankland. Do I think it will naturally get done? Not entirely convinced. From the other side of that, you need to remember Hearts would be facing into their own fans unless they get an incredible fee. They'd be facing into their own fans going, we've just sold our, I think, top scorer and our club captain midway through a season as we go for that third place. I mean, Aberdeen are imploding anyway, but you know what I mean. So that's a difficult sell for them unless they drive the hardest bargain that they possibly can. Rangers might not want to pay that fee. Again, I go back to some of the commentary here. Shankland's a great goal scorer. He's probably peaking as well in terms of his age and his ability at this moment in time. Is he the long-term option? Do we want to spend that amount of money? Is he going to be the number one choice? Does he fit in Clement's set up? Or are you just grasping at somebody who's going to get you goals against other people? Is he going to lead the line at Celtic Park and Ibrox in an Old Firm game? That's a question for everybody, including the listeners and watchers. Or do the club have something else in the bag? There are other names in there, but I know if you're looking at the domestic market, he's a good buy. But is he the right buy at the right price? I'm not entirely convinced he is in January.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think something I was thinking about the other day on Shankland, and you can both give me your thoughts on this. Do you think that if you were bringing Shankland in January, that it's just all about short term? Because would Rangers fans be happy for Lawrence Shankland to be the starting number 9 for the next 2 or 3 years? I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure that Rangers fans would be comfortable with that. So if you do think that way, are Rangers really going to go and spend 3 or 4 million on someone they only see as contributing till the end of it? Well, okay, of course he was contributing after that, but if he's not going to start, right, because 3 or 4 million is a big fee. We've just said about Cyriel Dessers, it's a massive fee. That's why the pressure's on him, right? And they expect him to play and score goals every single game. That surely has to go against Shankland as well. If you're not convinced he's going to be the long-term striker for Rangers, do the club go and spend that money in this window?
That's the point there that I was trying to make as well, in terms of if you're Hearts for a second, with all those things that I just said, there is no way you're signing up, unless it's with an obligation to buy at the end of the season, right? There's no way you're signing up to a deal that says this is a loan and you get to send them back at the end of the season. Right? It would have to be such a ridiculous loan fee that you'd probably better just buy them, right? Anyway, so if you are going to do that, then he is long term, and at this price point in January, he does have to be a relative starter. But you've got Dessers starting to fire as well, and does Shankland fit in at that moment? Again, it's too easy to say Shankland's scoring in Scotland and therefore he is the absolute must buy for Rangers. It's too easy to say that. Would he fit? Would he score his goals? Yeah. Do I think it could tip the title race in our favour? Quite possibly. Will it absolutely happen? big question mark, because there's lots of component parts in there that we've just discussed. Is he the long-term answer? Or are people, and I'm interested from the listeners, are they thinking short-term? It's just, get us this title. If that's what they're thinking, then that's a legitimate place to be. But what happens if you bottom at the end of the season?
Yeah, there's a lot of contrasting comments here. I'm going to actually go through them because they're really interesting. So there's one from RFC 72. Shankland depends on the price. 3 million absolute max is the most I'd go. Stevie One says Shankland will fire us to the title. 56 incoming says no to Shankland for me. Doesn't fit the model the gaffer spoke about after Dumbarton. Kendall says, I don't see him being our number 9 in the Champions League next year when we win the league. There's maybe a bit of tongue-in-cheek in there from Kendall. Appreciate that. George A says, I don't think Shankland is the answer. So again, another one against the signing. And Aaron Hunter says, not sure why folk keep harping on about long-term. If Shankland fires us to the title, that's a huge amount of UCL prize money guaranteed at the end of the season to put towards the long-term signings. They're all valid points. Honestly, they are. I can see both sides of this, interestingly. So it's going to be an interesting one. I'm going to actually ask you both again on this. I'm going to give you this is a good one because you might get clipped. So this will be interesting. I'll come to you first, Andy. Will Lauren Shankland be a Rangers player come the deadline next week?
Yes.
What's your gut? Oh, that's bold. Tommy, what about you? Do you think the deal will get done?
I don't think that one will go over the line.
I feel like I'm not deliberately sticking with Tommy here, Andy. I promise you, this is just my honest opinion.
Right.
I'm only joking. Yeah, I don't think this one will get done either. Unfortunately, I think that's Hearts are. I keep saying this. Hearts are well entitled to ask for a ridiculous fee. He is their player. He's firing in the goals every single week. There's a lot of interest in him, and I'm sure down south as well. They might not have made an official move yet, but I'm sure when he gets to 12 months left in his contract, there'll be plenty of championship clubs coming in for Lawrence Shankland. So I think Hearts will sit on it. They'll take their chance. They'll try and bank the Conference League money. If they get third, that's a guarantee. So yep. I can see it from their perspective as well. So I think it will be a difficult one for Rangers to get done. That being said, I do believe Rangers will bring in a striker before the deadline. So it'll be interesting to see who that will be. There's a lot of good comments in here as well. Most people are saying their gut instinct that Shankland won't sign. So,
well, just in case that do get clipped, I just want to also add the clip of if he does sign, I'd be really happy. That's not a problem. So I can clip that one myself.
Look, I love Andy's enthusiasm for this and positivity that he's going to be, holding a Rangers shirt at the deadline. That would be great. I'd love to see that as well. So
I would love to see it, and I tell you, I wouldn't like to be. Well, Phil Clement is going to be a long-term answer, he is. But if we don't, and he signs somebody else or doesn't sign anybody, and we don't win the league, you know what's going to get said.
Yeah,
fair.
There you go. There's a lot of interesting discussion points around that. But that was good. That was good. I enjoyed that about Shankland. I'm sure it'll be an interesting deadline as it approaches. There's something I wanted to touch on just as we come towards, I think it's around the 45-minute mark for the podcast. I wanted to actually have a chat about John Lundstram. Guys, I thought this was important. We had a discussion upon based on his kind of contract situation at the club. I think it was mentioned after the Dumbarton game where it was with that, and Philippe Clement said, it's a player he wants to keep. But I think it's financial between the club, which of course you would always expect in this situation. It really has been immense under Philippe Clement since he came in. It's clear the manager loves him. Maybe didn't have his best game yesterday, but I think he continued to battle in midfield and he plays a wonderful pass again for the goal. I mean, that's 2 fantastic assists in the last 2 games from John Lundstram, which is something I didn't really think he had in his locker, to be honest, that kind of passing range. He also gets the goal at Dumbarton as well, which he was spoken about. He's trying to contribute more towards. Come to you first on this, and Andy, how pleased have you been with John Lundstram's form, just in general under Philippe Clement? And the secondary part to that is, would you give him a contract? Would he be a player you would sign up for next season?
I'll answer that first, yes. Based on the form he's been in, absolutely. It's an absolute no-brainer for me, and it's got to the stage now when you name the normal back 5. It's Lundstram and another, which could be Jack, Raskin, Sterling. Personally, I think Lundstram and Sterling work fantastically well together. I'm all happy for that. The passes he's played the last 2 games has been absolutely immense, and that's just exactly what he can do. Now, to give him a new contract, it's a big thing, because there's going to have to be a lot of financial aspects to that. He's not getting any younger. Could this be his kind of peak, if you like? Perhaps. But as it stands right now, it's definitely worth it, and it's definitely something that we're looking at. I'm more than sure, and I would do it. It's a no-brainer. It's interesting that he's came onto this type of form since Clement came in, and even more interesting this week to discuss it when Steve Davis is just hung up his boots. Midfielder to midfielder there. I see a lot of the goodness in John Lundstram's game, similar to Steve Davis. I don't think it's a coincidence that he's been in and around for so long. In fact, just to go off on a complete tangent, as Tommy says, that I don't do, I was looking through Steve Davis stuff the other day there, and one that always pops up with me, and I think it gets overlooked when you talk about Steve Davis because there's so much. As remember the header when Lafferty scored in the 37th second down at Kilmarnock to win the league? That was just typical Steve Davis, and I think Lundstram has got that in his locker too. I can see him just going from strength to strength from now until May, and I think that's very important. He's a very important player for Rangers, and one that I think, yes, should be really looking to tie down for another contract.
Yeah, definitely one of the leaders now, Tommy, isn't he, in that squad? You looked at James Tavernier and Connor Goldson before John Lundstram arrived, but I think the last couple of years he's really developed to being one of the leaders in that team. I think Philippe Clement looks at him that way as well. I think there's been spells over his time at Rangers where he has been poor. He has been really poor, what you would expect from a player coming from the Premier League, but he really has turned it around to Clement, and it really shows that if he's buying into a manager, you'll get a really different player with John Lundstram.
Yeah, there's something there, and Philippe Clement does see him as a leader on and off the pitch. Sees him as a really intelligent footballer who can actually get the messages across really simply to people, which a lot of people might not naturally think with John Lundstram. You maybe think something different, but from the inside of the dressing room, he's definitely seen as one of those. I think it's 30 in February? I think that's right.
I'm not actually sure on that one. I thought he was older than that, but you could be right.
I think he is 30 in February. If I'm wrong there, I'm sure people will pick me up in the comments. Please do. But I think he's 30 in February. So you're looking at that, right? 2-3 year deal type of scenario, takes him towards the end point of where he is with that kind of running midfielder type of scenario. Are you going to get the best out of him? And that'll be factored into some of those financial conversations about what you're offering them. And I think John Lundstram loves it at the club, and kind of wants to stay. It does just have to match up to all the expectations. But I think if he gets the deal and he's there, then he's done well. Because by and large, it's not been a completely stellar journey that John Lundstram's been on with Rangers. He's had good moments, the European run, etc. But there's been a lot of pretty middling, mediocre performances in there. And if someone can see something and give him that opportunity, I think he should take it, and his representatives should take it. I think it gives us something in the midfield. I think with a bit more youth and energy round about him as well, it allows him to do a little bit more of that style of play in terms of pinging balls out and adding that to his game and showing people what he can do. So yeah, again, always the same. I sound probably pretty trite with that, but at the right price point, I would keep him in the squad for another couple of years. It just has to make sure that he's not trying to overinflate what he thinks he's worth, or indeed trying to break any structure that we have there from the wages, because we could get somebody who could do a similar job.
Yeah, I think it comes down to that one. If the manager loves him as a player, then you're at that point, aren't you? You just back the manager, don't you? If Philippe Clement wants to keep him at the club, you're happy to accept it, it's came a long way, because I think at the beginning of this season, most would have said probably just let John Lundstram run down his contract and move on, but we've seen how important a player he can be. So there's a lot of good comments in there as well. Cubby talking about the pass yesterday. Lonnie pass for Dessers finish was superb. Completely agree. David P, my take on Lundstram is that if Clement wants him to do what he can do to keep him, depending on it making sense for us financially, which is what you were spoken about there, Tommy, that is obviously important. The club are not going to break the wage structure for any player. They've always spoken about that, and they're going to stick to that. And Pete Lawrence says it's like a switch is flicked in Lundstram's head. He's hungry and determined. And I think you can see that. I remember reading something on Twitter. I think it was like maybe last week. And do you remember that instance? I think it was maybe away at Perth last year in St Johnstone, where Lundstram went to pass the ball to Sakala. And it was just a bit of miscommunication, and Lundstram threw his arms up in the air in St Johnstone. And they ended up scoring like a 25-yarder or something like that, right? So, of course, it's one of those goals you go, but the build up to that was so poor, and that was a completely different John Lundstram, who had completely lost his head at that point, did not believe in what he was doing. And I think it's good to have him back on side, and clearly there is a really, really good player in there. So yeah, I'd like him to stay as well. I think if Clement is going to really try and build his own side, which of course he's going to try and do it as a manager, it's good to have people in there that have been there for a while. So, a Tavernier, a Goldson, a John Lundstram. I'm looking at a Jack Butland as well. They're going to be really important in that dressing room to build, especially when you're bringing in, a Diamonde, Cortez that's linked. There's young players coming in. You need that around them. So I think that would be a really good bit of business from Rangers if they can keep them. The last thing I just want to... jump in, Andy.
It's also worth mentioning at the age he is with a new contract, it puts him into that category of player that in not so long, really, you're going to have to look at replacing Lundstram, Goldson, Tavernier, all these players, very similar age and very, very important players, will all need replaced at roughly the same time. It's another thing to look at as well.
Yep, absolutely. You're bang on. There was just one thing I wanted to touch on before we finish tonight, and it was just on the performance from Rangers yesterday. I thought it was a real, hard-fought victory. They had to really dig in to get the 3 points yesterday. Probably slightly fortunate to go in, 1-0 up at the break. I thought St Mirren done really well. They built into the game and they had a good couple of chances. I think it was the boy on loan from Celtic, Kwon. I think he should probably score when it comes to the edge of the box, and he just gets under it. Now that is 9 clean sheets in 14 games for Clement in the league, so it's clearly something he is focusing on. He clearly feels that's something to build on. Tommy, I'll just get your thoughts on that then quickly in terms of, is that a really good sign for a Philippe Clement team that he can really equip the team to deal with any sort of scenario? The 2 games this week have been very different. Hibs was a very, very open game. Both teams trying to play. St Mirren tried to play, but the conditions made it very, very difficult to actually play some good football. But Rangers were still able to grind out a result. Is that really important in a side, especially when you're going for a title?
Yeah, personally feel St Mirren could have had an argument that they deserved a point. Actually, the way they responded after we scored. Listen, that's it. We're in a title race. It's the end of January. You're in the trenches away from home. St Mirren have got their tails up as well. You've managed to get 1 goal. It's all, not back to the wall stuff. We were in it and all that. We could have scored more as well. You come away with 3 points. You're still in the title race. That's it. It's just getting all those points, and then we can have those games where we've got the big expansive football when, Celtic rock up to Ibrox and all that type of stuff as well. Right now, just keep banking the points because other people might drop theirs. That's it. Just keep putting the pressure on whenever we can. We've fallen down in that way in the past. I don't think we're naturally going to do that under Philippe Clement. So, not delighted with the performance, delighted with the points.
Andy, what's your thoughts on that as well? Just a really gritty performance yesterday from Rangers, but just important in a title race that, when you don't play well, you can still battle out to get those 3 points.
So important, so important, especially at the end of January, away from home, just after the winter break. All these things combined make it very nervy as a Rangers fan going into games. When you look at the January window, the Christmas break, coming back from that, it's not always easy. So to go to Easter Road and St Mirren on a pitch which isn't going to be the best, the conditions weren't the greatest. Personnel has changed dramatically. With Sima getting injured, out with our control. So many things going against us. To come away from that with a 1-0 gritty performance speaks volumes, absolute volumes, and bodes well, I think, for now until May. And probably more so the fact that it was Dessers that got the winning goal. He scored 12 goals. I think that's the first time he scored the winner. I think that's very, very important for him, for the fans to turn more towards him. I think that can't be underestimated as well. As much as the game was poor, some performances were possibly below par. The result itself and for what it does, it's magnificent, absolutely magnificent. And listen, 6 points from 6 from Easter Road and St Mirren away at the end of January. Take it all day long.
Yeah, tough places to go. Get the 6 points. That's what it's all about. I thought there was a really interesting comment from Stephen Robinson after the game yesterday saying that the difference in the game was that they didn't have a Cyriel Dessers. Now imagine a manager had said that 2 or 3 months ago. You would have been like, you would have been able to believe it, would you?
It started before came into the winter break in a title race. All right, we did disappoint Old Firm game, December, but started it in a title race, looking towards the end of January, still in a title race. That's it. That's exactly what you want, right? Pressure starts to get ramped up, and then it's all about who can get the best deals over the line before the window shuts, and then who can see it out in the stretch. Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Yep, sounds good to me. The title race is most definitely on, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the season after those two results. I think that's a really good place to leave the podcast tonight. It's a really positive way to leave it, actually. Sometimes I've been on this, it's been quite negative, so I'm thankful that we can leave it in a positive place. Just remember, everyone, you can follow us on all the usual social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. I've said Twitter there. I know it's X, but I'm going to keep calling it Twitter. If you missed the podcast live, remember you can listen back on all the popular podcast platforms. If you enjoy the content as well, please consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video. Really, really helps us out. I think it's about 60% of the people that watch our stuff don't subscribe. So if you could click the button, it really, really helps us, and we definitely appreciate that. We'll be back on Wednesday with the warm-up podcast. If there are any transfer developments before then, we will definitely be back to react to them. So keep your eyes peeled on our channel. Stay tuned, because we'll definitely have a lot of reactions to those signings. Let's hope Rangers are busy towards the window, that we've got a lot to react to. And it's just left for me to thank my guest now. Tommy, thank you. Thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you. Always a pleasure. And have a nice evening to the listeners and watchers.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. Andy, thanks for your time. Good to have you back on.
Anytime. And just to reiterate what you said there, Ross, the last 3 I've been on with you have all been very, very negative. Because of results. I think you had that kind of badge for a while as the negative host. I was on it 3 times with you, so it's been great to have finally a positive one with you, mate, and enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's not what it was called in the WhatsApp group. that's not what
it's definitely stuck with me. I definitely seem to always get pinned with the negative ones, but I'm glad I was on a positive one tonight. I definitely appreciate that. And yeah, thanks everyone for getting involved in the comments. That was really good tonight. Really enjoyed everyone's input, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.